Good morning. How are ya?
Happy Monday.
Yeah, December 14th, 2020. How many more days left until the end of this year?
I know.
So
I
anyhow,
believe it's the middle of the month already. I feel like December is just, I feel like from Thanksgiving on, it's just been like a quick downhill shoot down to the end,
absolutely.
to the end of the year. So
Yeah, this is the last one until January 4th. So, we've been doing this ever since the pandemic started. And we definitely, before we get started, I have to show you this. I found this on TikTok. This will send chill bumps. Watch this. Okay, this is the Pfizer trucks leaving the plant. Watch this.
Sometimes in our lives, we all have pain, we all have sorrow. But if we are wise, we know that there's always tomorrow. Lean on me when you're not strong, and I'll be your friend. I'll help you carry on. It won't be long till I'm gonna need somebody to lean on.
Chill, that totally sends chill bumps up my arm.
I think it's amazing how the everybody was able to pull together and make sure that happened. And then even here in Savannah, we had our own Dawn Baker participate in that. She was the first person in the country to receive the Moderna trial vaccine. She's actually getting an award. I saw Friday from CNN for doing that. So shout out to Dawn Baker.
Patriotic, man. That's seriously. Oh my goodness. Here's to 2021 that it's a better year. Anyhow, I totally went off script this morning.
That's okay.
Kathleen and I are hosting today. Yes, and afterwards we're going to be talking about our nonprofits and 10 things they need to know about running their organizations. And we have 7 experts in this area that will be joining us. But before we get started, I already did the video too. Let's talk about mink. Mink needs a home, and mink is a coastal pet rescue. Oh, golly. What else do we know about mink? Lisa Scarborough.
I love that name though. That's just he's so pretty. He, she, it. He, she, it is so pretty. Look at those eyes. Wow.
Intense. Apparently, most of the pets have been adopted. I mean, during this COVID lockdown, everybody
needs a snuggle buddy.
Yep. So let's see what else is happening here. Oh, there's a new disease tracking app that's going to launch in Savannah, Georgia. It was an article in Savannah Morning News this past week. This app is going to protect the community by tracking highly infectious diseases. So Adamer will alert users if an individual with pre-existing conditions is in the area and remind them to take additional precautions. So there'll be a beta test starting next month. Okay, there's the article. Got that up. Okay, and Kat, you want to talk about the Encourage Health?
Encourage Health. What do we have this week? We've got the their Ed series. They've got, the friendly routes for everyday destinations. We've talked about so much about Encourage Health and all their partners and all the different things they're coming up doing. I think that this is going to be a really, really good series. When it's 1 o'clock, when coming up?
No, it's January 7th, and it'll be 1 o'clock.
It's coming up. Like, I know it's not. There's no more for this month, but I know in January. Yeah, they've got some great stuff in the series so far. I've watched a few of them. They've really been very good.
Shout out to our Franny Williams, Frandasia Williams.
Shout out to Franny.
She hosts it. There's 4 live lectures a year. So Franny does that. So, okay, next we've got Leadership Savannah is accepting applications, and they extended it, I believe, until January 4th. So
that is
it's
such
a one-year
good
class,
program.
and it's limited to 42 people. It's an awesome program. I went through it 20 years ago, but it's an awesome program. So let's see what else we have. The next water cooler is January 4th. And then January 11th, we have another water cooler with the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce. So you need to be.
I may or may not be involved with that one.
Yeah. And then January 18th, we've got a water cooler called This Business of Art with a panel of artists. And I actually have artists from Italy all the way over to India and California. And Honor Lynn, just locally here. So,
yeah,
we're going to go just talk about This Business of Art because, yes, they create beautiful artwork.
Well, I think it's so, with the pandemic and all the things, people being closed in and all of that. I know so many people that say like, oh, I used to paint when I was in high school, or, oh, I used to draw when I was younger. And, people have been so restricted along the lines of where they can go and do things. I think one of the positive things that have come out of this pandemic and everybody being closed up is that people have really, embraced their inner artist in a lot of ways. And not only, through the visual, but, cooking and all the things, there's all sorts of forms. I can sort of kind of draw, but my art is in the kitchen.
Yeah. Oh,
so getting lots of good mornings. I saw Honor popping up there. Good morning to her.
Yeah, good morning, Corey. Yep, Honor, fun. All right, let's pull our first water cooler guest on. Today we have Christina Cook. She's a grad assistant at Georgia Southern University. Christina works with Dr. Marshall, who created Photo Voice. She created Photo Voice. It's a book designed to address barriers to breastfeeding among Black and African American women. Good morning, Christina. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. How are the two of you this morning?
Very good. What an interesting project. I don't think anybody's ever done anything like this. Why is it so important?
So the project is really important because the literature has found, so all of the journal articles and other research across the nation has found that a lot of these similar barriers that we found, so physical barriers, social barriers, cultural barriers for Black and African American moms, are prevalent throughout the country. So we wanted to look here in Savannah to see if any of those barriers exist, which they do, and how we can minimize them or help the moms get rid of them so that they can actually breastfeed and improve the health of not only themselves but also their children.
Reiterate that point because there's a lot of science out there. If you breastfeed your baby, there's tons of health benefits. Can you go into that?
Sure. So they are looking at the World Health Organization suggests exclusively breastfeeding for at least the first 6 months of life, preferably up to the age of 2. And so some of the health risks that can be reduced, like for the mom, can be type 2 diabetes, obesity, cardiovascular health, and with infants, a risk of sudden infant death syndrome can go down. Asthma is one of them too, I believe. There are a lot of other risks that can be reduced just from breastfeeding.
I even heard it makes your kids smarter.
Ooh, I haven't heard that one, but I'm interested to see if that's actually out there.
So the women that were selected in this project, you're trying to reduce the barriers and make it easier for women to breastfeed, right? What are some of the stories that you heard?
So a lot of the ones that we've heard over and over again from the different moms who volunteered with us was that they would get weird looks in public, even having some of their family members say that it's not really for them. And probably the most common one we heard besides weird looks in public is just that there's not spaces for people to breastfeed or to breastfeed.
So what is this project? How are you making spaces available for breastfeeding and overcoming the stigma? How is that going to work?
So right now we just started year 3. And so part of that is we are working with organizations in Savannah to help them develop breastfeeding policies so that their organization can be breastfeeding friendly, not only for the patrons
Right.
or community members who may come into the organization, but also the employees themselves. And so part of that and working with the Department of Public Health is creating a breastfeeding friendly space.
Very good. Yeah, it's about time that light is shed on it. I mean, just even pictures like this need to be, need to be seen. So we actually have a 30-second video talking about this project. I'm going to play it right now. There. That is that kind of, we need to get that word out more. And I know Dr. Marshall is going to be speaking at the Encourage Health series in, is it April?
Yes, we have 2 that we're doing. We have an Encourage Health one. We also have like one we're doing at Sophie as well.
And she's also gotten a lot of national notoriety for this. Do you want to talk about that?
Sure. Yeah. So we had an update go out through NACHO, which is the National Alliance on Community and County Health, I believe, to go out nationally. And then she has been mentioned quite a lot from APHA about it. So
fantastic.
It's been amazing.
Well, hats off to you. Many years ago when my little girl was born, they actually had coaches to help you breastfeed. I don't know if they still have that.
They do.
Yeah. It's important. It's really important. So if folks want to get in touch with you, how do they do that?
So they would get in touch with Dr. Nandi Marshall. So that would be nmarshall@georgiasouthern.edu.
Okay.
And if they are interested in creating a policy for their organization, we can send them the template for the actual breastfeeding policy, a link to the photo book if they want to see it because it is online, as well as like a breastfeeding toolkit on how to do all of this and become a breastfeeding friendly organization. Fabulous.
Hats off to you guys. Keep up the great work, Christina. Enjoy grad school. How much longer do you have?
I just started. This is my first semester. Yes, it's my first semester in the doctoral program. And so I'm looking at another 3 to 4 years. So
oh my gosh. Well, congratulations, Christina. Hang in there. We were talking about that before we went on. What a long journey that is. So anyhow, Christina, thank you so much for being on the water cooler, and we'll get you guys back on in April when she comes back on for the Encourage Health. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Christina. Bye-bye. Bye. All righty.
There are so many resources for that now. I mean, it's starting to be such more of a, not that it was never not a mainstream thing, but people are so much more. I mean, when I was younger, it was like, even when my kids were born, to be breastfeeding in public, you had to wear a tent and hide, and now it's so much more of an acceptable thing. And I'm so happy to see that people are out there working to remove a lot of those barriers, because it is so important, to the health of the baby and such. So, all right, who do we have next?
Well, this idea for the nonprofits came up when I was at a exercise class with Diana Morrison last month, and we were talking about things that nonprofits really need to know, but they don't. So we put together a panel of folks that are experts in this area that have been around this world for many years in this nonprofit world. So we have coming on Nipuna. Look, I'm sorry, Nipuna, I can never say your name. How do you say it, Nipuna?
Unmute. There you are.
But Marjorie, to get it right, so very few.
Okay. Nipuna.
You sound like a robot.
Oh no. Okay, we're going to start pulling everybody on here. Hold on a second. There we go. Okay, here's our panel. We've got Nipuna with I Volunteer International, Kristen McGee with the YMCA of Coastal Georgia, Diana Morrison of Ad Specialty, Michael Siegel, chair of the Savannah SCORE, Aileen Gabby, she's also a SCORE volunteer, Tom Glasser, and Tom Greenlaw, also with SCORE. Good morning, and thank you so much for joining. How are y'all?
We're good. Good morning.
Great.
Yeah.
Diana, you're on mute, Diana. So when Diana and I were in this exercise class, we started naming all these things that we wish that nonprofits knew. And Diana, what was one of your big things that you wish nonprofits knew?
There's can you hear me? I feel like I'm echoing.
Yeah, you are echoing.
Okay, try again. So the main thing that you and I talked about that day after a sales tax that I had in 2018 was that most nonprofits feel like they are sales tax exempt, and they are not.
Diana, we're still hearing too much. If you can actually leave and then come back in, we might be able to hear you better.
So I'm gonna pick up on that for Diana because she and I actually worked together on this. So I actually know this woman until she gets her mic. So a lot of nonprofits think that they are tax exempt, but they are actually not. And you have to meet a certain criteria with the state to be sales tax exempt. Sales tax exempt, not tax exempt. Sales tax exempt. So when you're out buying something from X, Y, like say you go into Ad Specialties and you go and purchase, there she is. You go into Ad Specialties.
Can you hear me now?
Unless you have that criteria, you're not exempt from sales tax.
Yeah, Diana, let's try you again.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Okay.
everybody else will just mute. So hopefully that will stop the feedback. So go ahead,
Catalina,
Diana.
how far did you get?
So I just said we worked on this before. I said most nonprofits, they're maybe tax exempt at the IRS level, but in the local sales tax arena, a lot of nonprofits think they are exempt from sales tax when they really are not. They have to meet a certain criteria, and that's what you were going to talk about.
So that's absolutely correct. Most nonprofits do think that because they have a tax exempt status, which is from federal income tax as well as bricks and mortar tax on property, personal property tax, they feel like they're exempt on everything, and they're not. And this really puts them at risk if they're ever audited. And I would think that most nonprofits that are audited every 3 to 5 years, that this would be caught. And most of the larger ones, no. But the ones that really feel like they are not tax exempt, that they are tax exempt, are small churches, small schools, booster clubs. Booster clubs are not tax exempt at all. The only way a school is tax exempt if it is purchased by the school with a purchase order for use in education. So t-shirts for a booster club, or t-shirts to say, hey, we're back after the pandemic, not tax exempt. And, you know, we found out when I started asking my peers, hey, how do you manage your tax exempt forms? How do you manage your ST5s and your LOAs? And most of the small business owners said to me, well, what does that mean? Which was a little scary for me as well. So an ST5 is a sales tax 5 form that says that you are tax exempt from these things. An LOA is a letter of authorization from the state saying what you are exempt from if it is different. So that's really my main things that nonprofits don't know. The other thing that I would just toss out there is, you know, when you see a nonprofit that does an event and they have what's called in-kind donations, those are all wonderful, terrific. But sometimes if you ask your other donors, when you're not having an event, you know, we need, I'm going to make this up, we're a shelter and we need blankets. A lot of times, a donor will provide things that are needed every day. They may not be able to cut you a check, but they may be able to provide you with items sort of in kind as a donation when it's not event based. And I certainly don't know nearly as much about nonprofits as all of these fabulous people who are nonprofits. But those are just my 2 points that I really, really, really can't stress enough.
Thank you, Diana. That when we were at that exercise class, I was like, goodness, we need to make sure the small business community, the nonprofit community knows this. And then I realized we have all these other nonprofits, these experts that also could share some tips. So Michael, let me start with you with SCORE, because I know you actually have formed a nonprofit arm with SCORE. Let's talk about that for a second.
Yeah, we call it a nonprofit practice. It's really a professional consulting group. And we were so fortunate to have folks like Tom Greenlaw, Tom Glazer, Aileen Gaby, and now Crystal McGee. And so what I would like to do is I would like to introduce these people. And then I'm going to turn it over to Tom Greenlaw, who is our practice leader, to talk about, start the conversation about the work that this team has been doing and just making a wonderful impact. I will say that there are not a lot of other organizations like ours that are even allowed to work with not-for-profit organizations. SBDC, for example, UGA, SBDS Small Business Development Center, wonderful, wonderful folks. They are precluded from working with not-for-profits. There are lenders that are not allowed to lend money to not-for-profits. But we have focused on this, and because not-for-profits are some of the hardest hit organizations during the pandemic. And our team will talk to that. But let me start off by just introducing folks. I mentioned Tom Greenlaw, who is our practice leader. Tom has over 35 years experience in not-for-profit leadership. He happens to be up in Cape Cod today. Tom Glazer, also 35, 40 years of not-for-profit leadership, including founding several not-for-profits, including our Coastal Jazz Association. So wonderful experience. Aileen Gaby is the executive director of the Susan G. Komen Coastal chapter, and Crystal McGee, who will join us, is the newly appointed district vice president for the YMCA. So we have an amazing group of people. And with that, Tom Greenlaw, if I may turn this over to you, please.
Sure, Michael. Thank you very much. And so glad to be on this call, and especially talking about nonprofits and Savannah's nonprofits. When I had the opportunity to join SCORE back about 3 years ago, I had several conversations with Michael about what it is I might be able to bring to the table to help the organization. And I hardly got the words nonprofit out of my mouth before Michael said, "Great, would you lead up our not-for-profit practice and try to coordinate not-for-profit activities?" And I gladly accepted, because I think that, as many of you know, nonprofits are unique. While they still need to be run like businesses and run like for-profits, they're unique entities, and they really need unique expertise. And I'm delighted to say that right here in Savannah, we have a team that is really focused on helping Savannah's not-for-profits. And when I say that, I say from cradle to grave. And what I mean by that is startups. I especially spend a lot of time with fledgling not-for-profits and groups that are hoping to get started. And we talk about a lot of the issues that my colleague brought up earlier about taxes and what kinds of taxes are you exempt from and what do you need to do. And there are many misnomers about taxation, especially whether it's real estate or sales tax or things like that. But then we also deal with in practice not-for-profits, both large and small, to help them through a variety of issues and do things, as mundane as project-based work, all the way to strategic planning. And I've done a couple of projects with Savannah nonprofits with board strategic planning workshops. And the best thing about SCORE is it's all free. These services are all for you at no cost, with the small exception of some workshop fees that we occasionally, particularly if they're live, that we occasionally use. So that's yeah.
Let me ask you, what would be your piece of advice to nonprofits?
That's easy. Get a mentor. Yeah, get a mentor, Marjorie. And use the team at SCORE or use another team, but really get a mentor, particularly if you're at the executive director level or senior staff member of a not-for-profit. Get advice, seek other colleagues, and really, get some good mentoring advice. Yes.
Can I add to that, please? I think one of the things that's interesting to note is that not-for-profits may benefit from more than one mentor. Why is that? There's operations, there's fundraising, there's board relations, right? There's governance. So each of those, correct me if I'm wrong, folks, but each of those is such a specific area of expertise and a specific area of focus for a not-for-profit that it may be that you kind of break it up into specialty areas and not just have a one-size-fits-all type of approach. Does that make sense, guys?
Absolutely.
Napuna with I Volunteer International, I mean, you talk about a nonprofit globally that started just a few years ago. I mean, what are some of the biggest lessons you have learned starting your nonprofit, and what do you want to make sure other nonprofits know?
I hope you can hear me properly this time. Okay, nice. So yes, I want to echo what Tom and Michael said. We have actually been SCORE clients for I think the past year, and we have gotten a tremendous amount of support. One of the things we did, definitely get a mentor, but also for the organization. Apart from the board of directors, we have a board of advisors that we put together at the beginning of this year. They come from a variety of industries, not-for-profit, public service, private sector, and they also bring a variety of different levels of partnerships to the organization. And it's very easy for them to join Marjorie or in our board of advisors. So they've helped us a lot in building the organization. But another thing that I really, really want to mention, especially for the Savannah community area nonprofits, as a tech nonprofit ourselves, it's painstaking when nonprofits don't leverage the opportunity of technology. And technology is not just having a couple of softwares for a nonprofit or having a nice website. Technology is supposed to automate things for you so that you don't need to burden your staff, burden your volunteers with some of the things that you can just easily automate. So with COVID, even if things go back to normal, there's going to be an overwhelming amount of activity happening online. So one of the first things we did was looking into software that can automate some of the main functionalities of the organization so that we can let it run on its own. And also making sure we look at our websites, making sure it's very user-friendly, making sure it's very accessible using mobile devices. also taking leverage of the 501c3 nonprofit status to get free software. There's so much of free software.
Oh, what a great tip.
Yes, don't stick to the traditional ones. There's so many software coming out every day. So search online, look at the software that has free access to nonprofits, and new technologies coming out. So those are a couple of advices that I can give to startup and small to mid-sized nonprofits.
Nipuna, can you recall any of the actual software names that would be helpful to nonprofits watching?
Yes. For us, iVolunteer International, we use Google Suites for free. So all of our, Gmail, Google Drive, everything's for free. We also use Canva for nonprofits. It's Canva Pro, completely free for nonprofits. We also use Slack to communicate internally with our staff and also partnerships that we have. Slack is completely free again for nonprofits. Another, great resource is TechSoup. Nonprofits need to know what TechSoup is.
Yes.
Because it provides discounted software, discounted hardware, for nonprofits. So those are just off the top of my mind, a couple of software.
I tell you what, we at SCORE, all of our Microsoft suite, all of the other specialty software that we have, we've gotten through TechSoup. And it is either free or really minimal, and it's the manufacturers who actually donate the products for the benefit of not-for-profits. Wonderful.
I think it's interesting that a lot of nonprofits, this is such a huge topic, Nipuna. We could have a show just completely on this, but the one thing I'm going to reiterate what Nipuna said. TechSoup as an example, you just pay the licensing. So you can get your QuickBooks, you can get your Adobe Creative. Yeah, QuickBooks, you pay the licensing. Adobe Creative Suite, Google gives you Google Suite is free for nonprofits. TechSoup has just I can't even say how many, a laundry list, and a lot of times you're just Dropbox, you pay a licensing fee. And it's like, Adobe Creative Suite costs several $100s on the very high end, and you can get it for next to nothing. I mean, I got QuickBooks for I got Adobe Creative last year for like $60 for a licensing fee, and I got the full package to be able to use all those things. So I think what Nipuna said about gaining use of technology to automate some things, the large nonprofits, you have lots of people to do lots of things, and you have big budgets or larger budgets than your smaller nonprofits. But your smaller nonprofits, I'm involved one here locally where there is no executive director. It's completely board run and it's completely volunteer. So the operations are volunteer run, which means all these people are working full time and then coming home and paying attention to this nonprofit. So we really utilize technology, even down to, the employees we have over the summer. They use a program called T-Sheets to clock in and out, and it automatically syncs with QuickBooks.
What is it called?
T-Sheets. T-Sheets.
And is that free?
It's no, but you can get it again and you just pay the licensing. It syncs with QuickBooks. They all merge and work together. So from like the human resources standpoint, it automates the payroll process and it automates the time process. And so it's just one less thing you have to do from an operational standpoint. So technology is your friend in like
Honor just mentioned they received Enterprise 365. Does anybody know what that is here? What is that?
I don't know what that is.
That's the Microsoft. Microsoft Office suite.
That's Microsoft Office suite. Yeah. So like I said, TechSoup, if you check out anything, I'm sure Nipuna has a list, but if you check out any type of resource for nonprofit software, I would say TechSoup, TECH, soup, SOUP.org is your first stop.
Okay, awesome. Good. I'm loving these tips. Who else? Crystal, would you like to talk about some important things that you feel like nonprofits absolutely need to know in operating?
Well, we are one of those larger corporations that Catalina just mentioned, and we are, able to be very resource, fortunately. Oddly enough, though, we were a pencil and paper organization until about 2 years ago. We could not even register people online. And I will share that the biggest help for us and all of our members was to be able to have that digital footprint and online presence, and being able to find a way to allow people, especially now, to have that virtual presence as part of your organization, no matter what it is. And we just recently, because of COVID, launched virtual fitness classes. And I know we did have the Facebook Live feature, but now we're able to do something for members only to drive our membership. So being able to connect a way to increase your membership or your customer base is important for you. And to be able to use some of the things that Nipuna shared in TechSoup to create that digital storefront is probably the most important thing that we've been working on in the last few years.
More good tips. Great information. Aileen, you're with the Komen Foundation, but you're also a mentor with SCORE. What insight can you share with nonprofits watching?
Well, I've learned a lot since I moved to Savannah. You know that I came from Baltimore and ran a much bigger nonprofit operation there. And it's been helpful to see the nonprofit landscape here in Savannah, that there are a lot of small nonprofits. And I think they probably get the sense that they're all alone in this. And I think what SCORE brings to the table is you're not alone. And even just the people in the community, like you, Marjorie, like, there's help just a phone call away. People, I think, in this town really want to help you. And so that's wonderful, because you can pick up the phone, get referred somewhere, get this free mentoring. United Way has classes, Gulfstream has classes, SCORE has presentations. So there isn't this sense of, oh, I have no one to go to. Even if you're small, there's a wealth of resources. And Tom and Michael know this. My particular focus is board development, board relations, that boards can be amazing sources of support if the time is invested in them. So if you're a director, spend time individually with your board members, get them involved, get them engaged, and they can be wonderful advocates in the community. So that's my particular focus with SCORE, is board relations.
Recommend having like not a contract, but like an MOU for the board members? Or, I mean,
a board agreement.
What is it?
So we have something that was board driven. I took it from my Baltimore organization here, of ways that a board member can provide resources and access to resources to the organization. And it's an ambassador form, a participation form. And instead of me creating it and saying, here are all the ways that you can help, do a session with the board and they throw up their ideas. I can take someone on a tour of the facility. I can ask someone to lunch. I can ask someone to give a presentation at the Chamber of Commerce. And we literally have a menu of maybe 50 different things that they can choose from, but it's theirs and they own it. And when we're recruiting for board members, which is year round, that's something that we talk about, or here are all the different ways that you can help. It's not just cookie cutter. So I highly encourage that.
Nonprofits, as small businesses, really are the backbone of a community. The government, our local government, cannot afford all these services. So these nonprofits are crucial to the community. And all these great tips on how to make a nonprofit stronger really will help improve every community. And my hat's off to you guys with sharing this information. Tom?
Marjorie?
Yeah.
Marjorie, I'd like to be sure that Mr. Glazer has a couple of things to share. One thing I've learned from my colleagues here is that there are a lot of folks that think they need to start a not-for-profit.
Another good point.
But they either it is not really a charity, they think they're just going to not pay taxes, and other reasons that really aren't consistent with the whole reason why organizations are granted not-for-profit status. And I'd like, Tom or Tom to talk about the fact that we often will discourage people from creating a not-for-profit and encourage them to create the organization as a for-profit entity. And if they want to give to charity as a for-profit entity, God bless. But they don't qualify for or should not even consider trying to be a not-for-profit. So, gentlemen, Tom Glazer, any comments on that? Tom.
Yeah, I'll jump in on that one. Thank you. We do, like Tom Greenlaw said, we do see and meet with many people in the community who are, good-hearted people who really want to give back. They have an idea for a nonprofit. They mean well, and in some cases, they want to do this just as a means to give back. In other cases, they want to make a career out of it, and there's nothing wrong with that at all. So what we do when we start the initial discussions, and I'm specifically talking about nonprofit startups now. We try to really get into motivations, and if it's something where they are looking to create employment for themselves and a legacy for their families, maybe they should be doing it as a for-profit entity. They feel that maybe they can tap into outside funding sources, but they have no idea if there is a demand or a market for this among funding sources. And then there's that tax angle that they think is such a crucial thing, which may not be at all. What we try to do, at least I do with my SCORE clients, is really start at the beginning. Let's talk about the market you're hoping to serve. How do you know that there is a need? There are other organizations in the market that are already somehow serving that need. What is the best way that you can organize this? How can you build a board of directors? Many people think I can easily build a board among my friends. Well, friends are maybe people who will say yes to anything you ask them to do. You really need some good advice, legal advice, financial advice, connections to funders, and other things. You should be looking strategically at putting together a board, putting together a budget in COVID times. Can we use virtual or virtual things to demonstrate the need to build some relationships and plan for getting over the pandemic and doing more in-person things? Many of nonprofits obviously are involved in in-person events, and this is a tough time for that. So what we try to do is work with each individual client and try to do an assessment. We don't put pressure on them. It's up to them to decide how often they want to meet. We say, is this a reasonable? These are things we talked about doing today. How long will it take you to do these things? When would you like to be getting back together? And it's a very comfortable relationship. I think any of our SCORE clients would tell you that. So it's been from a standpoint of someone who's been in the not-for-profit management world for many, many years. I've been retired now for 7 years. It's refreshing to see so many people who want to get into nonprofits. The times are changing, and it's a very valuable thing if they ask for our help, and we'd be certainly happy to give it.
Do you assist them with fundraising strategies?
Oh, absolutely. This is Tom Greenlaw. Absolutely.
We don't do any of these things directly for them.
But Tom Greenlaw, go ahead.
Tom. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Tom, I stepped on you. We absolutely help them with setting up strategies and setting up the templates for strategies. One of the things that we're very proud of with SCORE is a series that we did this summer, and they actually had 5 webinars during the pandemic, during the height of it, from sort of cradle, again, from the beginning to the end of what some strategies specific to nonprofits ought to be during the COVID pandemic of shutdowns. And one of our most popular series was one on fundraising, where
So
we
what-
gave some specific tips to for fundraising, virtual activities and things like that. And Aileen, I know, was a big part of that. And that was one of our most popular presentations.
Can we go over some of those, the top 2 strategies for fundraising? Because that's huge right now.
Yeah, I mean, I can start it. Aileen, you can finish it. But I mean, the first one is to be honest with your donor base and ask, and don't be afraid to ask, and ask for help. And whether it's something small or large, now is the time. So that certainly would be one strategy. And the second one would be to think creatively. We spoke a lot during our webinar series about some creative strategies, especially in the cultural world. Not-for-profits were using virtual tours and virtual events and all of those kinds of things. And now you see they're very popular. And Aileen's group, Susan G. Komen, my gosh, you've gone virtual and had a lot of success. So Aileen, do you want to talk about that?
Yeah, we had to be creative. I think what I always push with my organization, and I talked about during that class, was trying to be in touch with people all the time, year round, and not just waiting until you need something to ask for something. So cultivating relationships, sending news, and if you've had a news story, share it with your donors just to say, here's the good work that we're doing. And that's it. You don't necessarily have to ask for money in that moment. You have to have those touches year round so that people feel invested in you, that they're a part of something bigger than themselves. I love mail, so sending thank you notes, sending newsletters, things like that to stay in touch so that people don't feel like, oh, she's in touch with me again. She's just sticking her hand out for money. You want them to feel cared about because they care about the cause. So I like year-round cultivation.
So Aileen, what is a good open rate on an email campaign for nonprofits and fundraising?
I don't know that. I think Mark, who is also a SCORE volunteer mentor, would know that. He has great information on that.
Crystal, is there anything you can add to that from your experience with YMCA?
Yeah, actually, one of the things that's worked for us is really telling our story, because I think a lot of people do want to help, and so the compelling stories are super important. United Way does a tremendous job in setting up the stage and in interviewing a person that's actually a benefactor of the recipients of the donations that we give. And we try and do that at the YMCA as well. But I also find this fascinating is that a lot of people share the story, but they never make the ask. They just assume that somebody is going to give, but they just never say, would you like to donate to this project, this program? And I think being courageous in making that ask is also a very important, simple, but yet important thing to do and be mindful of.
So Crystal, is that a phone call, or are you making the ask in the email, or a letter, or both, or all? I mean,
I think one of the strategies that we use here is all of them. We want to hit them as much as possible. We might send a letter to our past donors to say, hey, I'm going to be reaching out to you in a week. Please prayerfully consider your gift to us again, and then making that phone call. It also depends on the size of the gift too. I mean, I certainly don't want to send an email to somebody that I'm going to ask for to support a program with a $5,000 gift. That's a face-to-face. So I think it's very different, and it's also very personal, depending upon your relationship that you have.
Thank you, Kat.
I was just going to reiterate what Crystal said. I've been listening here, and as one who, I started my career about 25 years ago in nonprofit, working with a very large one, a national organization. And then about 6-7 years ago, got involved with a very small nonprofit that was here and then kind of died and then kind of came back to life again. And so I've had the opportunity to both work the large and small. One of the things Crystal does at the Y is in line with, this last weekend, I had the opportunity to work with Napuna's group, talking about utilizing the word of mouth and public relations as a nonprofit tool, and where we have operational things and fundraising things and, volunteer recruitment things. One of the things that is most important, I believe, to the nonprofit sector's success is that PR tool. And to use your quote, Marjorie, you purchase advertising and you pay for PR. You pay for advertising and pray for PR. Public relations is, it's really a free bit of advertising. In your book, which I personally think we say all the time on the show that every small business should have your book. Every nonprofit should absolutely have this book, especially if you're small. And in that is your matrix. And Aileen just said, do something all year long to remain in contact with your donors. Well, your matrix is a public way of doing that. Crystal does a fantastic job, and I serve on the Y board, and I've seen her both in the board meeting and out in public. And after 25 years, I like to think I can teach some things, but I absolutely can learn some things. And Crystal, I learn from you all the time. Crystal does a fantastic job of getting out there, and I watched her speak to Rotary a few weeks ago. And she not only talks about the organization, she tells the story. She absolutely makes the ask. And when she's speaking, she does it in a way that she's not talking at the group. She's more talking with the group. And she gets in there and you automatically feel like you've known her your whole life when she's speaking. She does the same in board meetings. She's not just presenting information to the board. She's bringing people into the board meeting. She's bringing members into board meetings to tell a story or tell a success story, really engaging the board to where they leave feeling like they've actually not only attended a meeting and gained information, but they actually now have a story to go out and tell in the community, which increases their word of mouth. So, I mean, it's being the authority in what you do. And, those credibility markers, showing leadership in the community, get out there and speak and be the authority in your field on whatever your cause is, making sure your news makes it out there, all those things that you list. Nonprofits really, it's a business. I mean, we're here to serve the community, but you have to treat it like a business. And the best way to get your business out there. What's your quote about the word of mouth statistic, Marjorie?
92% comes from word of mouth. And I want to say hello, good morning to Larry Cudmore. I met Larry in Idaho Falls. He has I guess it's a horse therapy for folks with disabilities. And I know he got my book through a friend of mine. We all went whitewater rafting many, many years ago when they were celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary. So Larry, welcome to the water cooler. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm hoping you as a nonprofit have learned a lot of information today. And if there's a score, Mike?
Yeah, I'm gonna have to jump off. We actually have a chapter meeting.
That's right. That's right.
Two quick things. First of all, I'm so proud of this group. We're thrilled to have Crystal joining us now as our newest SCORE mentor and member of our team. I want to mention, because you mentioned about Larry, and I think Tom Greenlaw was mentioning about virtual stuff.
Mm-hmm.
One of our local clients here that several of us have worked with is Faith Equestrian Therapeutic Center, similar to what Larry does.
Yes.
They have an event every year called Boots and Barbecue. They do the therapeutic riding also, Boots and Barbecue, and it's always been an in-person. The last couple of years, I think they've netted something like $11,000 or $12,000 from this silent auctions and stuff. They did it virtually this year and made $36,000 because more people could attend, more people could be involved than the folks that would have to travel to the event. So virtual stuff can be incredibly
Powerful.
successful if you are creative in how you do it. So with that, I'm gonna have to sign off. This is wonderful. Marjorie, Kat, thank you so much for giving us this opportunity. We look forward to being on the water cooler again sometime in the near future. Everybody be safe and happy holidays to everybody.
All right, we're not signing off because I know Nipuna has some more information he wants to share.
Okay.
Bye, guys.
Hey, Marjorie, I've got to jump off too, but
No problem.
and Nipuna, I'm sorry, I don't mean to jump in your spot. I just want to say that
No,
one of the
please, go
things
ahead.
that I brought to RY here locally, and one thing that people that run nonprofits need to be mindful of is what Catalina said. It's a business, and I'm afraid that a lot of times in nonprofit, the philosophy is you can't make any money, or that's what some people think, but that's absolutely not true. You just have to, whatever you make needs to be reinvested into your mission work, or maybe it is your facility. You need to, upgrade your security system or something. But when I came here, the challenge was that it was not run like a business. And while we were doing well enough to, pay the bills and have some left over and pay and give our raises to our employees and to continue the mission work, but it wasn't until we started really looking at cutting the fat so that we could find more resources to do more in the community. But it had to be run like a business, looking at those financials and understanding the financials and engaging your entire team of people to understand how important the bottom line is to your business, because it is a business. And I just wanted to share that that was the most powerful thing I had to learn moving into a nonprofit environment.
There's so many lessons to learn. That's why I wanted us to get this very influential group together. I mean, 7 experts coming on, just sharing what they know. I mean, that's how you move the needle with growing a nonprofit. It's like, what's worked for Crystal? What's worked for Nipuna? So Nipuna, you were going to talk about a Facebook page that you started. Crystal, hopefully you belong to this too.
Not yet, but I'm going to, and I'll see you soon, Nipuna and Catalina. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely.
Bye, Crystal. Yes, and Marjorie, before that, I want to stress on something really, really important, right? And I want everybody, if they're in a nonprofit, if they're volunteers, to listen to this. So for years, we have told the nonprofit community, get your online act together. Get your websites together. Make them mobile friendly. For years, we didn't start telling them this at the beginning of 2020. The pandemic hit, and if your online infrastructure wasn't stable, you were dangerously close to running out of being able to help the community, right? And there's another trend in the world that's happening. So now we're starting to tell it, but you need to adapt before it's too late, like COVID, right? So that trend is volunteers. Your traditional volunteer base is declining. People are not going on Google searching for a specific nonprofit, going onto your online form, signing up through a website. That trend is declining. People are connecting to your nonprofit on a one-time basis. The trend is that a lot of young people don't like weekly meetings. Young people don't like browsing through websites, signing up for broken forms online. That is not the trend. The new trend is volunteers want to connect to your specific projects. They want to volunteer and get out. So you want to build infrastructure that can support that, right? So when it comes to volunteers, they are not just people who come in and help a project and go away. Spread your leadership through your volunteers. Get the word of mouth, because there could be potentially that only time that volunteer is going to engage with your organization, because they want to do a lot of things. They don't want to be attached to one organization. They don't want to pay membership fees for one organization. They want to do a lot of things in the community. So when volunteers come to your organization, make them a leader. Tell them about your organization so that they can go out, spread the word of mouth, become donors themselves, become more impactful and spread your word. So that's one thing that we've started talking about. So just like technology, don't wait until things go down to change your volunteer infrastructure. And hopefully iVolunteer International can help. But one last thing, Marjorie, you mentioned, we wanted to bring not just organizations, but individual nonprofit professionals together in the Savannah area, right? And we browsed online to see where can we come together to discuss, and we didn't have a proper place. So we created a Savannah area nonprofits Facebook group. So if you are thinking of starting a nonprofit, if you're already a nonprofit professional in a, any capacity nonprofit, go on Facebook and search for Savannah area nonprofits, right? And it's a group where nonprofit professionals, individual people share resources, have discussions to be resourceful and grow ourselves as nonprofit professionals to work together. So those are the final two things I will say to our audience.
Just so much information, and just a shout out for I Volunteer International. Napuna, if anybody's watching and they are a nonprofit, how specifically can you help that nonprofit? And let's do a case study. Let's do an example.
Absolutely. So we do two things: advocacy and action. And our main umbrella is volunteerism. So advocacy, we can help you reach out to more volunteers. We can help you put together your volunteer infrastructure, what sort of message you're putting out. So, we work with local and international clients for advocacy, right? Promoting volunteerism. When it comes to action, we are building tools. I Volunteer Now is a volunteering mobile app for Georgia that we're launching hopefully in early 2021. That will create volunteerism so much easier. It's going to be a mobile app. People will be able to volunteer for a project according to their live location.
Yeah. So like if I'm traveling, like in Italy, and I'm in Milan, and I want to meet some local folks and help out on a project, eventually I'll be able to go, I Volunteer International. And
Absolutely. That's the hope. We hope to go global. There's a lot of other mobile application platforms that are operating worldwide, but we hope to learn from them, collaborate with them. But we are starting in Georgia, a volunteer mobile app that will make it so much easier for people, just normal people. They don't have to have volunteered at least once in their lives. They can be new to volunteerism, that can just volunteer in their community very easily. And we are hoping to provide dashboards for organizations to keep track, because as I said before, volunteerism is evolving. People want quick program, volunteerism. They don't really cling to your organization. They want to come volunteer, go back and come again on a day that they're free. And we need to create an infrastructure for that.
So Napuna, what was one of the first nonprofits that joined? Georgia Conservancy?
We have posted projects for them. We have also kind of started having conversations with United Way, because United Way is a leader in engaging volunteers in our community. So we've started having conversations with them to see what sort of advice we can learn from the community. Another organization that we started is Salvation Scarves in Atlanta. They donate winter clothing, and we've been able to help them with their volunteerism and donation drives. We also work with a coalition of organizations called Volunteer Groups Alliance, that advocate for volunteerism. But it's all volunteerism, advocacy, and action, because there are thousands of people in your community that can be your volunteers, donors, leaders. So why not engage that resource? So
just to reiterate, if you're a nonprofit watching, go to I Volunteer International, get your nonprofit up on their site. Is there a cost for that, Napuna?
Absolutely free. If you have a project coming up, submit a project. You can also sign up for the beta release of the app so that you can get early access as soon as the app is out. You can get it. So it's ivint.org. You can type I Volunteer International on Google, and that's the first search result you'll get. And you can get in touch with me if you have any other questions.
So you can actually help recruit and find volunteers.
Absolutely, yes.
That's huge. That's huge. I just love this concept. It's wonderful. It's Oh, and it's 10:03. Yeah, oh my goodness. We need to wrap it up. Oh my goodness. Okay, Napuna. Well, this was a really interesting show. I hope the nonprofits had some good takeaways. I know I did. I mean, that definitely good information. So we're not going to meet again until January 4th. And then what else do we need to say? Oh,
today is the first day of early voting.
Of course, absolutely.
Yeah. So you haven't, if you are registered to vote in Georgia, today is the first day of early voting, and you can. There's a reduction in ballot boxes out there for some of those absentee ballots and such, but they are still out there. You can check you can check the registrar's office to see where they are. So.
And I also want to give a shout out to my daughter. 1 year ago today, she walked across the stage at Georgia Tech to get her PhD, and I have a 3-second Girl. Dr. Young, she's so
That's
far
been
away.
a year. I remember texting you while you were sitting there doing that. I can't believe it's been a year.
December 13th, she walked across the stage. Yep.
Wow. Wow. Well, I think today's show, I'm excited that we were able to do this. I think that, you know, we could talk about nonprofits for another 10 shows, just giving tips and things. But I think some of the most important takeaways, you know, Nipuna touched on volunteers and, you know, engaging your board and all of those things. I think one of the most important things for nonprofits to remember, someone said it along the way, have a board agreement. You make sure that you have an agreement with your board member when you're recruiting them on. Make sure that they are not just going, I mean, you don't want board member, every board, you could have 25 people and there's always going to be a small group that they just end up being kind of a name on a list. And that is what you don't want. If they're not able, not everyone is a fundraiser, but they do know people, they can network for you and they can connect you to fundraise, you know? So I think it's important that every board have a board agreement. I think every board member needs to have a buddy, always going
a mentor with SCORE.
Well, a mentor with SCORE, but even internally, you have to have your fundraising, you know, you buddy up your board members to where they present the strongest representation of your cause. I think it's important that not everybody needs to go and be a nonprofit. You know, I'm very close to a nonprofit that pulls in resources from the community and meets them, pairs them up with, you know, schools and such. And what I found is, I mean, there's more nonprofits here than people in a lot of ways. So a lot of times you can partner with a nonprofit that already exists to bring your idea forward and save yourself some paperwork, because it is a business and, you know, there are operations issues and tax issues, and you have to file annual forms and you have to file payroll forms. You have to file, you might have that tax exempt status from the state, but you also have to register as an official from the IRS, you might have that 501c3, right. But you also have to register with the state as a nonprofit to be able to fundraise here. If you're fundraising here without that state authorization, then you are operating illegally, and that there's big ramifications for that. So there's just a lot of things that go into it. Get Marjorie's book. She won't tell you, but I will. Get Marjorie's book and use that as a tool. And, everybody here was just such a huge
expert
vat of knowledge. I think it's awesome that we did this today.
Yep. That was Diana Morrison's idea. So
I had to quote Diana Morrison, if you're a nonprofit, you have to have your posse. Go out and get your posse.
I'm hoping that with water cooler next year, we're going to have one panel discussion a month. So if you have any ideas, let us know. I know the one panel discussion in January is going to be this business of art, but I like to keep this going as long as COVID's around. So it looks like maybe there's some end in sight in 2021. I don't know.
We get a lot of requests for it now. I think we might have created something that the community likes, wants, and needs. So, one of the good things to come out of this pandemic is being able to, this virtual Zoom meeting type
yes, it is.
Experience. It's much more accessible than, having to drive downtown and find a parking space and get to a certain place and do all that. So I think that this virtual environment provides a lot more access and meeting people where they are, which is super important. And I look forward to continuing it. I think it's a good thing.
So guys, thank you for watching the Water Cooler Savannah Community Headlines Live. I'm wishing you all.
Don't forget about Mink. We already talked about Mink, but don't forget about Mink. Mink needs a home, right?
Mink needs a home. Yep, Mink needs a home. And
everybody, Merry Christmas, Happy Hanukkah, Happy Kwanzaa, Happy Winter Solstice. What else is there? Happy everything.
Prayers for a healthy, happy non-COVID 2021. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. Anyhow,
But-
I'm about, yep, cutting off right in